Hello, everyone. Good evening. This is Promise Resource Network's Expansions with me. I'm Jane, for those of you that don't know me. Welcome. As you tune in, if you want to let me know that you're here, that would be awesome sauce because I love the live. And it is a full moon, y'all. It's full moon. It's full moon in Cancer. And I got a little microphone. Check it out. Hopefully you can hear me. Let me know if you can't. I was rushing around trying to get some water real quick before I began. And I was like, oh God, I don't want to be late. But then again, it's always perfect timing, right? So it is December 29th, right? Yes, it is the 29th. We are coming up to the end of the year, and I am feeling so many things. One, with the end of 2020 at the backside of all the things, which just feels really good. I feel this eagerness and excitement moving into a new year. Always do. And it's kind of like 2020 was just like, what? So it's like, I think we're all looking toward 2021, toward 2021 as being a new opportunity, a new chance, a new way of being. And we have this 13th full moon this year, y'all. That's pretty intense. In a sign that's all about emotions. So I'm curious, first of all, if you all are feeling this energy of like the new year, the end of the year, all the emotions. I want to say, hey, I love that my mom is on here and I just see that she tuned in and says, good evening. Oh, it's a chilly evening. Yeah, it was a beautiful day here. I was able to be in the sunshine and go for a walk. And then as soon as the sun went down, it was like cold. I'm lighting sage if you're wondering what the smoke was. I just noticed that it looked like all of the smoke just began to arise. It's me. I did that. So are you feeling all the emotions? Are you all feeling all of the emotions at once? Are you feeling like it's like this? Like I'm feeling not happy and then sad, but I'm feeling happy and sad. I'm feeling peace and I'm feeling really, really excited. Like, are you feeling literally all of the emotions at once? Because that's a part of what this full moon is and all that fun stuff. Cold and windy all day, she says. Oh, that's keeps you on your toes. Keeps you bundled up, hopefully. Hopefully. So yeah, feeling all of these emotions, right? So I wanted, y'all know, I never get on my phone while I do this. However, there are some things that I want to read. So I want to pull it up now before it's like too late, right? Okay, I'm getting it. You know, I could have had this prepared ahead of time, but I just really thought of it. Okay. So let's all just breathe together, shall we? Let us breathe. Take an inhale, y'all. It's the end of the year. It's the last expansions of 2020. Start to just feel your breath, feel your body, feel the weight of 2020, feel it on your body, feel it in your mind, feel it in your emotions. Go ahead and bring awareness to all of the heaviness that 2020 brought you. And also begin to feel a lightness, a brightness, a fire, an eagerness, a drive, a focus, a concentration, a fullness with your next breath in. And as you start to feel this lightness, begin to look ahead. Look into your future, this vast unknown territory that you've never even been to before. And let your breath exhale into that version of you, this future version filled with drive and purpose, living from your divine center. Are we here? Are we all on the same vibe now? I feel like we are. I truly feel like we are now. I needed that. Um, I also was in a meditation right before I jumped on here. It's like I meditated and then I ran to go get water. And then I was like discombobulated after the meditation. That's always an interesting place to be in. So, anyway, how are y'all doing? You doing okay? Um, you know, I wanted to talk today about the principles of life, right? And we are in day 3 of, I think it's day 3 or 4. The numbers and the nows. We're celebrating Kwanzaa, right? If you celebrate Kwanzaa, you're in it. I think it's day 4. And the Swahili word for the day is Ujama. I think I'm pronouncing that right. If I'm not, please correct me, for real. Because not so much of the traditions of Kwanzaa with the candles and the way that the feasts are and the celebrations are, but it's more so the principles of Kwanzaa that are the principles of life that I hold dear to my heart. And I kind of want to talk about the principles of life and like, what is that even? How are we living? Are we living a life with our own principles, like guiding the course? Are we living a life of the principles of someone else, right? Makes me think of the principal in school, which is funny because I remember when I was learning how to spell and learning principal and principal. And I remember the PAL as the school principal. I remembered it because it was like he, or actually it was told he at the time, not even he or she or they, but he was your pal. And that is how I remembered principal, L-E, from principal, A-L. Anyway, that was a total tangent. Ding. But hey, I do that. But yeah, like, to me, we grew up, in the school environment with the principal, right? Is this looming figurehead that, you needed to obey all these other people so that you didn't get in trouble by the principal. Not ever really defining, exploring, creating our own sovereign life principles. So then we get out of school, we don't know who to turn to. We can either turn to other sources, right? We turn to bosses, just keep telling me what to do, right? Because I don't know how to think authentically and autonomously and sovereignly. I don't know how. Or we turn to distract ourselves because we don't know what else to do. So maybe we start doing drugs and alcohol and being in unhealthy relationships and behaviors. Or we do self-study, and we go inward and start to really define and cultivate our own life principles. And I love Kwanzaa's purpose, focus, because they're talking about, like, this holiday is about the principles of life, and they all have to do with the way I am and the way I am and how it relates to others and how it builds a community of oneness, right? So like today's Ujama for Kwanzaa means the way I translate it, the way it feels for me, is to support the community, to support local businesses, to support the profits and the abundance of others, of our brothers and sisters on this planet, and let them also support my business, right? My purpose. And to me, that just makes sense because we've grown up in this lack mentality, for lack of a better word, where like there's never enough. And if there's enough, then there's barely enough. And if I take it, then I'm taking away from someone else. So today's Kwanzaa celebration focus of goodness, to me, starts to really negate the lack mentality and really start to say, no, there's more than enough. I can celebrate other people's stuff and they can celebrate me and support. And it becomes a collective, like a for real, like a co-op of life. So I'm curious, do you all celebrate Kwanzaa if you're on here? Or if you're catching this on the replay, you let me know, like, or if this is the first year that Kwanzaa's made into your reality, or how you feel about it, because I'm so very curious. Um, something that was coming up for me with this principles of life. So for me, first I'll ask, what drives your principles of life? Please chime in. Like where do your principles lie? How do you create them? How did you create them? Did the church create them? Did the school create them for you? Did you think about them yourself? Were you inspired by Kwanzaa or Hanukkah or any other holiday um, or cultural celebration? Diwali, is there what principles? How do you create your principles in life, or have you? Would you share whatever it is you can share around this topic? Would be lovely, please. um, but I was thinking about it, or not, but and let's be honest. Um, I was Mama Jane's chiming in says follow the Bible. So check this out again. Never read it. However, I feel like it's so many stories that are so wrapped into each other that like I would have to go to like an actual Bible study group to actually pull out the principles of it, because I know that there's so many different translations of it. I guess that's what you do is you read it and you take your own translation and then you create your own principles. I guess that's it. Because the Bible isn't the religion. The religion is the religion. They use the Bible. That's the thing. Okay. Thanks for sharing that. This also made me think of A Course in Miracles as an option as well, like as just one of the principles that I know a lot of people follow and have studied. I've studied some of it. I haven't like dived. What's the past tense of dive? I haven't dived in it. I've yet to dive in it. How about that? I have yet to dive into A Course in Miracles. However, the principles in that they seem to be very aligned with Jane's principles, which are all love led. Like love led. Those are my principles. I want to say hey to Kai, who's jumping on dove. That's what I dove into. I had dove into it. Yeah. I guess if I put had, if I just say I dove into, then it could. Thank you for that, Kai. And also, Mama Jane says that her mom helped her develop a lot of good principles. Interesting. Oh, interesting. What kind of principles did you glean from her? I'm curious. Or what's like the top one or two, if you would like to share. Because I feel like we get these principles from, either one source, all over the place, within. Kim's on here on the YouTube. Hey, Kim, how are you? I'm happy you're here. I like to see the little icons where everybody's popping in, like kind of from. I love that. It's just makes me happy. But yeah, the principles of life, where do you get them? Like, where have you gotten yours? Are you still looking for them? Are you still creating them? I find that mine are ever changing, ever growing. Kai's asking principles as in morality, not mortality. I said that wrong. That's not what you wrote. Kind of in morality, the way we are. The principles in life to me are the way in which I show up. How do I act? How do I think? How do I speak? How do I be? Usually, hopefully, right, for the greater good, in my own life and in the life of every others. So morality, yes, and there's also a lot of action beyond morality, which to me is the core seed of why we do the principles, why we have principles to live by. Mama Jane says the things that she had learned from her mom in the principles were to be kind and considerate of others and always help people. Keep love up front with everything. Awesome. What a great principle to get from a parent, to be kind and considerate, to consider others. That's why I really like today's Kwanzaa celebration, because it's taking not just the view of another, but also their purpose, their passion, their give back, right? If I have a business selling candles, because I love it, I love making candles, like being kind of considerate, one, you're supporting me, and that's what today's is about, or not today's, but today's Kwanzaa, is that it's really supporting everything that we're all doing, like that. I love that. And the keeping love up front. So um, that has been one of my key principles. Um, really like landed for me, like completely grounded for me in timelines. Um, I don't know, 16, 17. I don't know. It was a process, but like it wasn't until like a few years ago. It was like huge paradigm shift. It was like my higher self dropped into Jane's body, and I was like, okay, I'm taking over now, Jane. Your ego is, I'm done with you, type of stuff. And that was when like love really became the top navigator for me. Like that was definitely put that up front of everything. It doesn't mean that I don't miss it and that I don't act a fool and totally goober out and like let my ego do stuff. Duh. But it's definitely my principle. It's my intention. Kai shares that principles that she applies to her life. Shares that my mom taught me to be independent and fight for what I want. She taught me how to be resilient. I'm so glad you're on here, Kai, because I actually have a question about that. Mom's replying to Kai. That's awesome. Because I do also believe that when we stand up, right, in our independence, in our sovereignty, in our empowerment, in our authentic self, right, I'm standing up in my independence, right? I'm going to stand up for what I believe in that's in line with this principle of life, right? Which is maybe to be loving, compassionate, accepting, and creative. Those are the 4 pillars of my life principles. And when we stand up like that, there are also steps that we take from that stance, right? It's like if I stand up for social justice, right? So I can stand up and I can be a disruptor, right? A disturbance just in my stance, in that independent stance against injustice, right? Social injustice, right? And it's like the steps that I take moving forward in that independent stance. I think that's what makes us resilient, because that is when we start to really get resistance, right? Like if I'm standing up to fight for what I want equal rights for all human beings, human rights. How about that? Stand up for human rights. There are people that are actually not in alignment with human rights. They may say they are, but they're not. And you can tell the way they are. They're like, that's just not cool. So there's going to be resistance. So it's almost like, having your eye on the prize and you're going down your path and people are like shooting you with like Nerf balls and stuff. And you're like, it's kind of like that, which I think makes us more resilient for sure. What I'm finding a challenge with is I feel like there are new ways to be stepping as we continue to ascend into a 5th dimensional consciousness and a 3rd dimensional body. And we start to integrate higher frequencies all the time into our body, taking in more light, being the light, that we haven't collectively walked like this before. Like not as like a herd of human. And I don't know how to it's not that I don't know how to do it, but I don't know how to do it. Like, check this out. I want to read this to you all. Someone sent this to me today, which was just so perfectly timed. It says, and this is by Emmett Fox. I just burped a little bit, so thank you for your patience. It may happen again. I just drank a lot of tea. Anyway, it says, quote, "There is no difficulty that enough love will not conquer, no disease that love will not heal, no door that enough love will not open. It makes no difference how deeply set the trouble, how hopeless the outlook, how muddled the tangle, how great the mistake. A sufficient realization of love will dissolve it all. If only you could love enough, you would be the happiest and most powerful being in the world." And to me, being that force of love is one of my principles in life. That's what I strive to be. That's what I'm always walking toward, is being this force of love. And I notice too that that doesn't mean that I'm going to sit around under a tree and just meditate like the Buddha, right? Or the stories of the Buddha anyway. But I actually am fiery. I want to stand up for what I feel is right. You know, I want to stand up for equality, equitability, freedoms, liberation. I want to stand up for love and wellness and joy. So then my question is, how do we live into these principles and at the same time do what you just mentioned, Kai, which is basically be independent and fight for what you want? Like, how can we fight in the name of love? It's like the big story in the Bhagavad Gita, you know, oh, what's his face, Arjuna, you know, he was on the battlefield needing to fight his family. And it was in the name of love, the greater good, the safety of more people. So there was this like, okay, yeah, I get why you're fighting for that, right? It's the principle of life, you know, so that all beings can be liberated and free, right? The loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. So I can understand like why we would want to stand up and fight. And I ask, how can love dissolve all of that stuff? Because to me, love doesn't feel like fighting, but love feels like standing up. Love feels like saying, for example, no to Amazon and yes to the maker that lives on your street. You know, working together as like yesterday's celebration for Kwanzaa was collective work and responsibility. You know, working like a team. Everybody's a part of this human team, this game of life. We're all in the same board game, like intentionally working toward that. So you can do that in love. So my question is, what if someone's not working collectively and responsibly, right? Do we stand up to them or do we just let them figure it out? And where does that play into the principles of life? I'm so curious. Yeah, Mama Jane says our actions speak volumes. Yes, they do, right? It's like, you know, if my principle of life is to be accepting, loving and accepting, but, you know, I talk smack about other people because I don't accept how they are. Like, I'm not living that, right? My actions are saying that my principles aren't really my principles, that they're just lip service. Kai says, I think fighting with love has everything to do with intentions. As long as you intend love, love will be the result. Okay. What about this? So I love this conversation. I feel like we're like diving in, just like expanding this, which is why I love expansions. It's the spiritual dimension of wellness. Y'all, this just lights me up. Okay, so Kai, what do you all think? Help me out with this. So if, as long as you have the intention of love, love will be the result, right? If you're fighting for something. And then I think about people that I've had a lived experience with who, for example, express physical aggression and then professed love, right? I love you so much. This is why I hurt you. Have you ever been spanked? Have you ever spanked a kid? I love you so much. This is why I hit you. It's like, is the result love or is the result fear? So maybe it's like looking into the future, right? And seeing like, what's the result really going to be? Is it going to be that I'm going to put fear in my oppressors? Or am I going to inspire them to change their ways and change the ways of the world? Because adding more fear is just going to beget more fear, right? Goes against one of my principles of life. And Kai says we help guide them as much as we can. Sometimes when we're in different places in life, we can think we're fighting with love, but we're really dancing with the devil, so to speak. So those who are dancing yet not loving, and they need to be shown how to love, which would go back to what Mama Jane said, right? Which would be the actions speak the volumes. So then do we fight? How do we fight? How do we fight in the name of love? How do we fight in the name of love to uphold our own principles? And to also support the upholdment, because that's maybe not a word. It probably isn't a word, but we're going to go with it. The upholdment, because you know what I'm talking about. Of other people's principles. You know, like what if your principle is, hey darling, like what if your principle is to be kind and considerate, right? And you notice that wherever you go, people are like fighting. Like, do you stand up and be like, be kind and considerate? Like, how do you stand up and take real big action to defend your loving principles in life? I feel like that's what we're walking into the new year, going into a new year where we are discovering, a lot of people are coming online with, they're having their awakenings, their spiritual awakenings, third eye open, veils coming off. They're starting to realize that the whole system is corrupt and it's been employed to, control humans. Basically, like it just is. It's a system of oppression and control, So it's like we're realizing that, well, once we realize that we can stand up to it, now how do we fight through that? How do we create? We get to create through it. That's what we get to do. That's what I think. But how else can we get through standing up for our own principles of life when others are not in alignment with that principle, say, of love? Mama Jane says to respond with loving calmness. Ooh, that one. Yeah, loving. Oh, yeah. And Kai is chiming in with patience, right? Because I'll tell you, if you love something so much and you're just like flying off the handle and people don't hear that. People don't hear that at all, right? And if I'm impatient while I'm trying to stand up for my principles of my life, you're not going to hear me because I'm being impatient with you, right? Impatience leads to nobody's going to hear anything. I love that. Responding with loving calmness and patience. There's a mantra, I think it was Ram Dass, and it's, I am loving awareness. And just repeating that over and over again. I am loving awareness. I am loving awareness. To me, that's what source is, right? It's love and it's aware of it. It's like it is aware of itself and it's infinite knowing of all it is. It is consciousness by definition. So to speak the words of I am loving awareness, because consciousness is aware, it makes me remember that. That's what I thought of when you said loving calmness. And to stand up, almost like if you were God goddess, his or herself, and you were standing up for life, for what you feel in your heart to be right and good, whether it is or not for more people or whatever, whether people agree with it or not, because we're all going to have different thoughts and opinions on it. But to stand up in that powerful way for life. Does anyone else get a fluttering in their heart? Kind of oh crap basket. That feels real scary to do if you think about it. For real? Does anyone else feel that at all? I want to say hey to Michael. He's waving. If someone said, hey Jane, you're going to go in and you're going to talk to every single senator, congressperson, whatever, they're all going to be in a room. And you're going to walk into that room and you're going to stand up for what you believe in, for what you know that they're doing is not right. You're going to be able to stand up and speak your mind, speak your piece. Could you imagine being given that opportunity? How would we, like, does that, like, do you get like, yeah, I would say this, and I would say this, and I would say this, and yeah. And then do you think, like, when you actually got in there that you would totally clam up and like, ugh? Or do you think that you would be able to speak calmly and patiently in loving kindness and calmness and just in love? To speak up for the principles of life that you hold so near and dear to your big, giant, vulnerable heart? Or would you choke? Right? Would you be like, well, you all suck? Because that's what I hear most people doing, right? You're wrong. You shouldn't do that. You suck. They're not speaking about their principles. They're not speaking what they want. They're just shaming, blaming, or pointing a finger at what the others are doing. And then how are we perpetuating even a resemblance of a life lived with principle? You know, I want to say hey to Charles Quick in the house. Says, hey, happy Udama. I know, right? He shares, I found being calm in chaotic situations gives others a sense of calmness. Yes. Okay. Here's a question then, Charles. Say you and I are having a conversation and we are butting heads against like your deep core principles and my deep core principles, right? Big time. And I may not even know it. I may just be like oblivious to the chaos that you may be feeling. Then how would you stand up for your principles? I mean, would you just address it? You know, would you be like, hey, you know what? I'm not really aligned with that. Yeah, and those pointing fingers really do rarely provide answers. Kai shares being an example, I believe, showing people they can change, they can make it. People learn through others. So if I stand up in my testimony and say, I beat fentanyl addiction, here's my story and how I did it. It motivates them to know they can do it. But even when I was in addiction and dancing with the devil, thinking I was fighting with love, the result was love in the end. Love and examples I can give to others. Hope this makes sense. Oh, it totally makes sense. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that big time, but for real. And just a little quick shout out to any human being that ever has like made it through an addiction. Addictions suck. God, food, drugs, alcohol, relationships, distraction. Ugh. And even if you're in current addiction, active addiction, it's okay. You're still getting through it. Just a heads up. Yeah, showing the people that they can change, I think, is really huge. Like, you know, when I quit my jobby job to pursue a life love led to inspire creative living around the globe in love and light. You know, that was like a huge shift in my life. And then not only that, but because I kind of like took that bull by the horns and took that leap, that flying leap in complete faith, trust, uncertainty, all that stuff. You know, I noticed that these things are testimony, right? We make it through the addiction. We create a new invention. You know, we do something in the name of this principle of life. You know, like Kai, you sharing that, you know, you've surpassed, you've transcended an addiction to fentanyl. Like, that's amazing. That like I forgot what I was even gonna say because I just got really excited that like this is where you are, right? Just, yay. But like I really like when I do that. It's really fun when I totally just like blank. Y'all do that? I'm sure, right? Like I know I'm not the only one that does that. Sometimes I get like multiple thoughts in my head at the same time. And then they all can't come out at the same time, so then I lose the one. Anyway. But Oh, the principles of life, right? Like, us moving through an addiction, to me, that is a part of a principle of life. Part of the principles of life that I also live by are like the 8 limbs of yoga, especially the yamas and the niyamas. How you treat others, how you treat yourself, purifying, um, being truthful, being honest, like all of these things are the principles of life that I intentionally live by. So all that I do is kind of like in alignment with that. So whenever we like transcend an addiction or a way of being, you know, a way we talk to ourselves, the way we have a relationship with ourselves or others, like that is a part of how we are cultivating a life based on our own principles. It's almost like we can create whatever principles of life we want. And I don't think that we remember that we actually have that freedom to do so. And we take on the rules, regulations, and principles of entities outside of ourselves. Um, or, or I noticed this, we don't acknowledge other people's principles and like trample over them, right? People do that. Um, it makes me think of um, I've seen people on the streets picking up litter, right? And then someone goes and throws a piece of garbage on the road, like right in front of them. It's like I'm obviously picking up everyone else's garbage because it's in alignment with the life that I want to see and experience. It's a part of my principles, right? To take care of the collective responsibly. So I'm picking up garbage, and someone else is saying, I don't care about your principles, your view of making life any better, safer, more healthy. Not only do I not care, but I'm going to rain on your parade. I'm going to blow out that flame. I'm going to poop on your porch. I'm going to shit on you. Like, people do that. We do that. Why? Why do we do these things? Charles says, been in that situation many times, especially in the corporate world. I try to approach with calmness and explain my beliefs, trying to use irrefutable facts when possible. Most of the time, they were trying to piss you off and make you lose your shit, so by not playing into that game was the best route to go. Yeah, right? You and I are kindred spirits because I'm definitely one that will just pull out facts, right? I'll be like, okay, so my principle in life is love, acceptance, compassion, and creativity. These are the things, right? These are it. And I can prove to you how the frequency of love heals, right? I can prove to you how compassion heals our nervous system and others around us through quantum entanglement, right? Like I can explain everything, the facts, the stats, all the stuff. And I can see how that can definitely be a really great route to be on. So then I ask, have y'all ever been in a situation where, okay, so check this out. This is the prime example. Side note, when I was in like high school and stuff and all the history classes, I could tell you all the stories of the history, but I couldn't tell you the timelines that they occurred, the names of the people involved. It was like data overload. I don't know, but I got the point of all the things. So when the Black Lives Matter movement became in 2020, I decided to do my own self-study, self-work, look into all the things, right? Expand my experience, see if it affected who I am and how I show up in the world. And one of the things I did was I was a part of the book club that actually Promise Resource Network hosted with Educate to Engage, which is another amazing nonprofit. Highly encourage checking them out. Anyway, we did a book club over like 7 weeks of the new Jim Crow. So I was reading the book and was flabbergasted by the actual facts of what was going on. The oppression, the way the system is, the school to prison pipeline, but like actually the facts that support all of that. And I would talk to people and they would be like, well, what legislation are you talking about? Right. And I was so overwhelmed with standing up for the principle of life that I hold dear, right? Which was, freedom and liberation for all. I was so impassioned by that I was talking about that I couldn't recall the data. I was like, the legislation that was in that, I don't remember, read the book. So I couldn't even pull out the facts, Charles, all that to say. And then I got frustrated, which means I lost my patience and my calmness with myself. And it was almost like I began to fight in a losing battle, even though I was the only one in the battle, right? Because whoever doesn't care about liberation and freedom for all, what are they even fighting for, right? Oppression. I ignore that. I ignore those fights and just fight for freedom. Anyway, Mama Jane says they do about when I was talking about the principles, and another thing that we do is we follow other people's principles. Yep. Makes me think about back to the example of like throwing the litter out while people are picking up garbage, right? On like the adopted streets or the creek cleanups or whatever. And you see someone throw a bag of Mick whatever out in the waste of where you are. And it's like, they're not living to their principles. Like, I don't think that people that would do that trample on other people's principles, I don't think that many of them do it because of their own principles. I think people that trample on other people's principles only do it because of an outside of self principle telling them. Does that make sense? Like, my friends laugh with me when I throw the garbage out the window. So I feel good. They stroke my ego. They make me feel like I belong in this group, in this clique. So I'm just going to do it, even though it doesn't really feel good to throw litter out. It doesn't really feel good because I always talk about how I want to save the animals. So people will trample on other people's life principles of life, especially the Kwanzaa ones. Like, if you look through these principles of life that Kwanzaa is all about, you'll find that there are people that try to stop these principles of life. And it doesn't come from a place of love. It doesn't come from a place of peace. It comes to me, I think it comes from a place of greed, of righteousness, of hierarchy, of better than, I don't want to work as collectively responsible. This is no team. I am the owner of the team. You all work for me. That mentality, the I'm better than mentality. So then not only do we get to grow into an environment, a reality, where we are consciously creating our own principles of life, we also get to influence those that trample on principles of life, like heartfelt individual principles of life. To me, that's standing up for injustice. Mama Jane says that they are followers, not leaders. Totally. And Kai says, yeah, that makes sense. A place of insecurities. Totally. I feel like that's where a lot of our human behavior comes from. It comes from a place of insecurity. The feelings of not enoughness. I'm afraid to really be seen, be heard. The things that I do, the things that I say, the things that I create aren't good enough. There are all these places of insecurity. And if I'm that insecure in all that I am, all that I think, all that I do, all that I create, then how would I even feel secure enough to create my own principle to life? Because I would feel like I don't even matter enough to be a participant to make a difference. So then I'm going to go by someone else's bullshit principles that says that you need to always be better than someone else. You need to make more money than everyone else. And if you don't, you're not good enough. Oh, and by the way, you got to get married and have 2.5 kids and a white picket fence and blah, 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 blah. Which is so lame. Kai's asking, where do I start the learning about quantum entanglement and 5D studies? I teach quantum spirituality, so I teach all of this, the interconnectedness of all of life and how we can use that interconnectedness with our own energy in body and out of body centers to manifest the life that we want. And quantum entanglement is a huge, huge component of that. So I teach it. I do like private sessions to teach it. And I'm actually working on a curriculum, like a quantum spirituality curriculum to dive into all of this. Charles says, in the litter situation, as in many other situations where people are causing passive aggressive harm toward each other's, in my mind, is just meanness. I agree. I totally agree with you. Because it's just basically unkind. To live by other people's principles, to me, is based on our own lack of knowledge that we can create our own, or lack of awareness that there are principles that make us feel good, that make us light up, that are in the good of the whole, you know? And then it's like just downright unkind to like rain on the parade out of like intentionally rain on someone's parade. You know, it's like it's one thing if your principles and my principles don't align and we butt heads, that's just duality in nature. You know, that's just polarity, duality. That's just the way it is. But if I'm going to fight you because my principle is right, and that's another thing, right? How do we not be too righteous in our principles? How do I let you have your principles of life and you let me have mine? How can we work together even when we butt heads? That is the powerful medicine, I think. That to me is like where leaders of the world come together and have someone mediate that through communication. World peace. Boopity boppity boo. Tina, hey, says, I have taught interconnectedness with my youth, but probably not in the same manner or depth as you. Yeah, I definitely go into like the depths. And I work with kids too, and it's really fun because they get it. Like they comprehend it, but it also resonates as like this deep truth for them. And they're like, yeah, like that totally makes sense. Yeah, like oh yeah, we are one. I love it. Kids are fun. Anyway, and then also she shares, to follow is lack of self-love or self-fulfillment. Yeah. Yes. To follow those who have harmful principles of life. Because there are some like one of the first of the yoga, the yamas and the niyamas. The yamas is ahimsa, do no harm. That's it. Do no harm. Like if you're not going to do anything, do no harm. Right? And that right there will keep me from following in someone else's principles if I'm aware, right? If I just stop and pause and like just assess the situation from a neutral perspective. Definitely. Also, she shares the interconnectedness is where the term flock came in. Ah, yeah, flock. And then I just thought of the flock of seagulls and the fun hair. Yeah, it's a band. But yeah, like I would hope for us that the humans, right? I would hope for the humans that we discover our own principles of life. And that discovery can come in the form of remembering or just discovering or creating. And to actually live by those principles and to be able to be courageous enough to speak up in the name of these principles, you know, to stand up for other people in their way of being so that they can live liberated and free. Can you imagine if that's the flock of humans? Can you imagine if humanity bound themselves together unified themselves in the name of love, compassion, acceptance, and creativity. Because again, those are my main ones. Like, could you imagine if the world unified based on those 4 principles? That if any of those 4 principles were oppressed, that the oppressors would get a stern talking to, however that looked in that culture. You know? Tina says, you just hit on a major principle for me, which is not judgment. Yes, pure, unadulterated, 110,000% acceptance, unconditional, radical acceptance. That one for me is one of the tougher ones. This is where I battle. This is exactly where I battle. Because in my space of intentionally being unconditionally accepting, right? Being the neutral witness, being in my divinity of witness, being in complete acceptance. And where is that in stepping up, standing in front of someone else to say, your principles are trampling over mine, and I need to tell you about it, because I can't not move forward until I share my feelings. What you do is what you do. Maybe that's where the acceptance comes in. I can accept what is and say, your principles aren't in alignment for this reason, and this reason, like Charles said, and have no expectations, right? Thank you, Don Miguel Ruiz with the 4 agreements. Have no expectations and also accept whatever their action or lack of action is. It's like acceptance, bookending, action. Kai says, when I do that, sometimes I end up allowing my anger to control my reaction. When someone disregards my educating them, constantly reminding them not to use the R word, it really gets me heated. So then I end up responding in anger, not love. Yeah. Yeah. Kai, I'm only a little psychic. Yeah. We literally hug. It's like if my principle in life is love, acceptance, compassion, and creativity. So if one of my principles is acceptance, then no matter where I go, my dominant container that I hold everything in is acceptance. It doesn't mean I have to like it. It doesn't mean I cannot stand up for what I feel is right in the name of love, or in the name of compassion, or in the name of creativity, freedom, pleasure, play, joy, like whatever that is. So I'm holding that container and still standing up, like was mentioned earlier on, right? Like standing up for what you believe in, to be that resilient fighter. But also remembering that it's not a hard suit of armor that we're like battling with, but perhaps it's a soft sheath of this energetic, accepting frequency that no one can come in and harm us. There's no right answers. And Kai says, this is what Clancy meant when he said, okay, fine. Right? It's interesting too, because, I'm finding that when it comes to standing up for social justice, rightness, safety, health, well-being, freedoms, these things I hold real, real close to my heart. And I'm finding when something starts to infringe upon the safety of others, the freedom of others, right? Love, those things, that my heart has a reaction. I can feel my heart beating faster. And it's very similar to resonance and feeling when I would feel anger, or when I do feel anger. So then I get to do a quick check-in. Am I feeling anger, or is this inspiring action in the name of a principle of life? If I'm angry, then that's when I know I don't need to talk. I don't need to respond in anger. It's not going to be good. But if I sit with it, it may take a day, it may take days, it may take years, it may take a breath, whatever, timeline, who cares? It's just nows. But if I sit with that beating heart And I go, all right, is this anger? And if it's like, no, this isn't in alignment with your principle of life. This isn't for the highest good of all beings everywhere. Then I get to be the courageous one to step into that ring and speak up for the principles that I feel are so important. So I want to read this one more time. It says, again, it's by Emmett Fox. It says, there is no difficulty that enough love will not conquer, no disease that love will not heal, no door that enough love will not open. It makes no difference how deeply set the trouble, how hopeless the outlook, how muddled the tangle, how great the mistake. The sufficient realization of love will dissolve it all. If only you could love enough, you would be the happiest and most powerful being in the world. So this is when I get to put my principles of life into like for real action, to let love conquer. Yeah, like we get to be the conquerors in love, with our voice. And trust that love will dissolve challenges, hardships, unfairnesses, pain, suffering, sorrow. That love will and does take care of that. When we love our brothers and sisters and our neighbors just as much as we love our pets. Calling that one out. When we can show enough love and care to the elders, to the children, that we show our freaking pets. Really. Like I know people that take their dogs to the dog running thing, the dog park stuff, and the dogs get more exercise than their children because their children are in standard schools. Then I ask myself, what principle of life are you living? Are you living the system's principles? Or are you living yours in the name of love, to dissolve the stagnation? We are living in a very interesting time. We're in this full moon. You might be feeling all of the emotions all at the same time. It's okay. We're made to feel. This full moon is a lot of water. It's a lot of the throat chakra. So it's a time for us to speak with courage. The cosmic energy that has been coming in is that to ignite the solar plexus. The moon energy is igniting the throat chakra, which means we get to courageously speak, perhaps in the name of, pick your principle, right? In the name of love. Let that be the words that dissolve the challenges and the tangles and the missteps. Let that be the change. Yeah, Kai, that's a really great point. She shares that once she tried to look at other people as their inner child, it allowed her to be calmer and more patient. I do that a lot. I tap into people's child version a lot, and then I'm like, oh, that's your core wound, right? That's it. That's your core wound. And then I can just be more patient and loving and kind to them. So be loving and patient and kind to you, to yourselves, as you navigate the end of the year, the transition, the 13th full moon in a year. Y'all, that's a thing. If you want to have a ceremony tonight, sit with you. Just sit with you, be with you. Perhaps write down or paint or draw, do something creative to let your emotions be acknowledged. Maybe perhaps you create your principles of life. Maybe you start to research Kwanzaa if it's not in your experience and see if any of it really resonates for you. See if you can add new principles to your life. See if you are courageous enough to be willing to stand up in the name of principles for all life, not just yours, but all living beings on this planet. What principles can you create and put into your daily life? And imagine what a new year that would bring, not only for you, but for me and everyone else on this planet. It would be the biggest gift ever. I love you all so much. And it is time. The hour is up. And I feel like I can keep going. I like this topic. This topic was really fun for me. And I really appreciate all of your feedback and words and comments and your energy. It was very supportive and helpful and uplifting for me. So I assume it will be that for whoever else is watching this and gets to watch this. Make sure you share this, share the YouTube video on your Facebook pages if you can. And that way we can get more subscribers on the Promise Resource Network YouTube channel. So until then, please take care of yourselves and please take care of each other. I will be on the Promise Resource Network Facebook Live page tomorrow morning at 10. We will be doing something creative. So we'll still be in these big moon vibes and all that. So take care. I love you all and I appreciate you so much. And keep creating these principles, right? Okay. I love you. Peace out. Take care. Bye, y'all.